Hey patrons, welcome to your weekly Creep Cult bonus episode. We are continuing with our Alphabet Roulette, and this week we have
Give me an H.
Yeah.
H.
If you guys do the ups, I can do the sides. Wow.
Huzzah! For anybody
Stupid as
not
shit.
watching, yeah, that made no sense. But
Yes, so we this week talked about Hell House LLC 2, the Abaddon Hotel.
yeah, so if you guys haven't heard us talk about Hell House LLC in the past, it's probably in one of our Terror Tales, or we've done it separately. I don't know, but
it absolutely is in all of those things at some point.
we are very big fans of the first movie. I think that was something that you might have turned me on to, like, way back in the day when we lived together, and I was like, holy shit, this movie is legitimately scary. And it's one of those movies that I always go back to if I need to pull out a genuinely scary movie to show somebody, where I'm like, oh, you want to turn off all the lights and
Get spooked.
yeah, pretty much anytime I'm dating a new person who I want to just like scare the shit out of, who isn't as well acquainted with horror, I'm like, I'm going to show you some Hell House LLC.
Yeah, so the plot of the first one very basically is a group of people own a haunt, and every year in New York they put it together, and this time they decided to do it in this small town in this in the Abaddon Hotel, and spooky shit happens while they're setting up, and then at the end of it there's like a weird happenings, a malfunction if you will, and a bunch of people die. 15 people die.
Yeah, and that's
it's
like
all
the
found footage.
Yeah, and you like know from the beginning that there's some sort of accident that's like framed that way, and then you as you go, you lead up to it. And there's a lot of like really good tension building, and then the scares are all very well executed and
Like
genuinely frightening.
Yeah, every frame has like different stuff that you can catch if you're paying close attention to it, and there's always something that will be ready to jump out at you, and all of the scares are really well earned based on the fact that they do all of that tension building and world building to set up this place as like this creepy place.
But just like pretty much all of these other found footage movies that we've ever talked about, they all are operating on such simple premises and simple stories. Just, largely, I think when they try to get too complicated, you end up with some shit like The Outwaters. But typically with like a Paranormal Activity or a Blair Witch Project, those are movies that there's really no material or room for sequels, and they just make them anyway because the movies are dirt cheap to make, and there are some people who just eat this shit up. But because I was such a big fan of the first one, I was cautiously optimistic about this sequel, but as I was watching it this time around, it dawned on me that I had definitely seen this before, and I think I may have actually watched this multiple times in the past, and it was so forgettable and boring for me that I had completely forgotten when you talked about it last week and brought it up, and was like, oh cool, I hope it's good. And then as soon as it started and got into the news show thing, the news debate, I was like, oh my god, I remember.
Yeah, and I was very much in the camp like, yeah, this is as good, if not better, than the first one, and my tune has changed on this watch. But some background stuff: Stephen Cognetti wrote and directed this one.
So same writer and director.
Yeah, and then this one stars Vasil Fluter.
Okay.
Wonder what their job is.
Sure, there's a cooler way to say that, but
Sure. Jillian Gertz. Joy Schatz. Oh, dude, I'm not making this up. It's Shatz. Okay.
I'm glad this is
Dustin
behind
Austin and Brian David Tracy. Okay.
so you could really say that they shats the bed with
So-
with the sequel.
So there's so many names on that list, and they're all caricatures of what real names are, but Dustin Austin somehow is the worst one.
Dustin Austin. He's a double firstie, dude. You can't be doing that.
That's worse than a double firstie. That's literally just one letter changed in each name.
Not the way that he spells it, but yeah.
No, in the conventional way to spell it, yes, it's just
The way we spell those
switch-
names in America.
Switch the D for an A,
But anyway,
So the loose plot of this is
like a breast
a
reduction.
cameraman from the first one, like an outside story about these people investigating,
your guess
a
is as
ghost.
good as mine
He's a
about what the
cameraman
fuck
from
this
that.
movie is about.
and his partner disappears, and I guess we never really know what happens to him, but he apparently survives and is now trying to preach, like, don't go to this house, bad stuff happened. And
well,
then
it's
he
the classic,
immediately
like,
goes
you
to
know,
the
the
house.
Descent to, like, any of these kind of sequels where they're like, okay, well, we will somehow try to convince the audience that, you know, this survivor from the first one is ever going to be willing to go back into this situation. It's always like, oh, well, they know the hotel better than anyone, so we got to bring them back, you know? Just have that connective tissue with the first one, even though in any of these horrific situations, nobody would go anywhere near this place. Like, especially him, who is convinced that it... Because, I mean, the only kind of interesting thing about this movie is that there are the people who are the skeptics who are like, it, you know, there was an accident, we didn't really see what went on in there, and it was just a malfunction of the Halloween haunt, and a bunch of people died, and really it's your fault, and like you should feel bad about this. And he's like, no, it's ghosts, but like, how is he going to prove that?
So we get this news panel of 3 dudes, and they're being interviewed, and one of them is apparently from the town, which we find out later is fake. He has more to do than what we thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the guy that had been there previously, and then we get a medium. And the medium and the guy that had been there...
He was pretty tall, I'd say. He's probably closer to a large, but...
They go back into the house because a blog got evidence that there was cult activity in the basement. But how did they get it? Yeah, I mean...
And then you just have a repetitive series of clips of people going into the hotel, and then the
hooded figure show up.
Hooded figure shows up. They go, oh my god, what the fuck is that? Run. Camera cuts. Goes to card that says, and then they was never seen again. And this is unexplained. And then we go back to the news report, and all the bad acting of all of those people goes on for 5 straight minutes, and then we cut back and do another clip of, now this person's going to go into the hotel. Then creepy clown man shows up in the background, and none of the scares are executed. It shocks me that this is the same writer and director, because none of the scares are executed at all in the same fashion as the first one. There's really no tension building from the very beginning. It's just, here's what's going on, and you know the whole time that there's fucking ghosts in the hotel and all that shit. And so it just feels so repetitive, and there's no new ideas here. It's just, how can we find an excuse to get people back into the hotel so that we can just recycle the same bits? Oh, you remember the spooky piano music from the first one? Now we're going to play that a million times throughout this one. Mm-hmm. Remember the first one? I'm like, yeah, I love Hell House LLC, but it's not like that's an iconic movie that, you know, so really it's like, you got to bring something more to the table here. And especially, like, I feel like the acting in the first one is very natural, and all of those guys feel like they're friends. Like, that whole group of people feels like friends. They're not, you know, Shakespearean actors, but they're good, and they didn't distract me from it. In this, I could not fucking stand a single person, except for maybe the medium, but I think that's because his character was so over the top and corny that it worked.
The giant planchette and the yes and no on the table.
Yeah, it was also ridiculous that it kind of worked for me, just because it was something more than just terrible acting, and terrible editing, and terrible pacing, and terrible scares.
I'm sorry. Right? Yeah.
You sold me down the river, my friend.
I did, and I'll be the first to admit it. I really remember being a lot more scared of this. I think there are some creepy stuff when that one kid goes in and then he just sees the feet on the stairs.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a cool idea.
But that feels like the first one, because it's subtle. But then they have also, like, I felt like every time there would be something that was subtle and scary like that, there would then be like 5... Like, they would just always take it 2 steps too far at the end. So then there's a card that pops up and goes, or like a lady pops up and she goes, but he actually was recording standing in that same position for the next 18 hours. But then we just cut to the end of his recording, and it's like, well, there's no impact to that if you had to just cut away and explain that he was recording for 18 hours. It would have been scarier if, like, that cut away, and then later somebody comes to the hotel, like, days later, and he's just in the same spot, and he's just, like, you know, flies and, like, all this shit, and he's just standing there and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Way scarier.
No payoff.
Instead, for every single scare in this, it's like, oh, there's a scary thing back there. Now we have to chop in a couple quick cuts of it coming toward the camera, going...
Yeah, a lot more like blackouts than I was expecting.
Yeah, and then anytime it's like, we think the audience is going to be confused by this dumb shit plot, it's just like, here's more cards that say, oh, and then this person, here's the real scary thing that you didn't see.
I also liked when they were trying to exit, and then that clown was at the door with the door open, and then right when he gets close, he's like, meh. I was like, okay, that was cool, because that was creepy. But yeah, it was, the person I watched it with ended up falling asleep pretty quickly. So,
well, John, this was your pick. Do you have anything to add beyond us just viciously tearing apart your pick? And I do want to clarify. I mean, I'm sure you understand. Definitely no shade against you. I wasn't mad like fuck John for picking this movie. I was like,
it's not like you made us watch Battlefield Earth.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was gonna say this is still not the worst sin that's been committed on this roulette that we've done. So, yeah, how did you feel, John?
My thoughts are that I thought this movie was going to be a lot better than it was. It was not very good.
The moral of the story is never trust Tone ever again on anything.
No, I definitely disagree with that. But I do think that, like, there might have been a couple of good ideas here, but I think the framing device of this, like, morning mysteries or whatever the fuck the news show is that everything is, like, baked inside of just doesn't work. I don't know why that was what they decided to use as the framing device. I think they could have continued with, like, having some form of an additional discussion or like having like just the secondary news crew, the investigators, like, who are like we record everything. I record while I'm taking a shit, those people. I think that if we'd framed it inside of that, it would have been better. But I think the reason why they wanted to do that is because they wanted to set up the little fucking thing at the end with having, is it Tully or whatever, the guy who owns the hotel, be the dude who was in the interview, which wasn't shocking.
Also is kind of just the same twist as the first one, where they have been interviewing that chick the whole time, and then it turns out that she has like been dead or whatever. And
yeah, that's something different than what he's talking about. But yeah, that's a good point too, where she's just dead during the interview. It's like, you guys did that exactly. He's talking about the older dude.
Oh, okay.
On the news show, right?
Yeah. And he ends up being
his twist that I'm the owner of the hotel.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get more guests.
Also, like,
I hated the ending. Even the first time I watched it, I didn't like the ending. And I really didn't like it this time.
Well, and the whole cult thing is so overplayed, and also exactly the same, like, let's expand the lore that Paranormal Activity did, which is like, we'll just have mysterious hooded cult figures and never explain what that's all about. I don't know if in the Hill House sequels they delve into, I'm sure they do delve into that shit more, which to me is the more boring stuff because it's unoriginal. I'm like, give me the creepy clown dude, and like that first one was scary because we've all, I mean, maybe not all the listeners, but we've all been through plenty of like Halloween haunts, and that scary idea of being like in one where there's all these like figures standing around and something moving and something being over there where it's not supposed to be. But yeah, I don't know. I think that it was just they wanted to cash in on Shudder. Probably was like, we'll give you some money. We want to cash in on the hype around the first one.
There's a reason why they're still paying to keep the first one on their service, but they stopped paying for this one.
Yeah, and I mean they're still making these movies. We'll talk about it in our main episode in Chop Talk, but they're making an like origins movie, like a prequel, which I'm sure is going to blow. But yeah, I mean, just all of this was pretty disappointing, and also doesn't make me want to like follow the rabbit hole down into the next movie and see where this goes. I'm like, I'm just going to keep the first Hell House as a Halloween time staple and continue to show it to people to make them shit themselves. And
I kind of want to rewatch Lake of Fire just to see like what the story is.
Because you're a glutton for punishment.
Sure.
I think that there's a lot of charm missing from this effort that is totally present in the first one, and I think a lot of that like circulates around, like you said, the Halloween quality about it, because it's a haunt. I mean, that's something that we've all expressed, are things that were part of our childhoods, and it allows you to yeah, I mean, it's something that we have a ton of value in, and I feel like it does things that other like haunt type films tried to do but didn't succeed, or not at least to the same degree, like the movie Haunt. Haunt was a decent movie, but I feel like Hell House LLC does a better job of that movie in like every category.
Yeah, and I think also like I like the smaller scale of the first one, just because to me that's more believable. When you start getting into this whole like, it seems like everybody is treating this potential ghost thing at the hotel like it's the biggest fucking breaking news. Like, we found proof of ghosts. It's like, nobody would be nearly as interested or excited or hyped about any of this. Like, this place would just be outside of the actual murder investigation. Like, if it had if it had leaned a bit more into doing, like, you know, all of these people are kind of investigating the murder, and it's maybe like a true crime documentary being made at the hotel, like with recreations of the first movie, and you do like a meta thing that way.
Or the medium going to investigate.
Yeah,
and the whole movie be around him like setting up shop, and
him have him do the classic, like, he's a medium who actually is maybe full of shit and doesn't believe in any of it, and then he gets his comeuppance in the hotel because the ghosts are real, that sort of thing. But yeah, just everybody going, like, just getting so wrapped up in this whole thing. I'm like, nobody would give a shit.
And then it's like, we implanted the idea in this kid's head when he was 4. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Also, just let it be a fucking haunted hotel.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't need to have, you know, all this crazy lore and all this shit. It's like, just let it be a spooky hotel.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're looking at how to do a sequel to a spooky hotel movie, correct, look no further than Dr. Sleep, because it doesn't talk about the.
Look no further than 1409.
It doesn't talk about, like, an origin story to the Overlook or anything like that. It just says, no, this place is just pure evil.
Yep.
It's not that hard.
It's an evil fucking place. Well, that's all I have to say about. Talked a lot more than I thought I would, because I was fully prepared to just come in and be like, this movie fucking sucked.
It was rough.
And there's not much to talk about. But yeah, I mean, really, if you take anything away from this conversation, it's go watch the first Hell House if you haven't seen it. Or if you have seen it, turn off all the lights and watch it again. Because like John said, you're always going to catch a little spooky
new stuff,
spooky fun stuff in the corners of the frame, and
make you go
yeah, and it's genuinely unsettling. And if you want to take a nap, watch Hell House LLC 2 : the Abaddon Hotel.
All right, great. So we're going to continue with the Alphabet Roulette.
Spin the wheel of endless possibilities.
We are going to spin the wheel of endless possibilities, and this next week is going to be I, in case you're not familiar with the alphabet. And I have picked Inner Space.
I picked Identity.
And I picked I, Frankenstein. No, I'm just kidding. I picked
I Kill Myself.
Did I choose Infinity Pool?
You didn't choose Infinity Pool.
I did indeed, and choose Infinity Pool. All right. Spin that wheel, baby.
All
See
right.
what we're watching.
Spin that wheel.
Anything's better than Hell House 2.
Come on, baby. What we got? We are going to watch Infinity Pool.
Sweet. I'm very, very interested to hear what you guys think about this.
Dang it, I wanted to watch Inner Space.
Let's get weird.
I know we were all fans of Possessor, so
Baby Cronenberg. Like,
yeah.
baby joke.
So tune in next week for hopefully a much more positive, livelier discussion about.
I think there's going to be a lot more to discuss, bare minimum.
Yeah, about Baby Cronenberg's second flick.
Right on. We'll see
Third
next.
flick.
So,
Forgot about Antiviral.
And T-Roll.
I don't like that movie. Anyway, we're going to watch Infinity Pool. We hope you do too, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
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 Goodbye.
What are you still doing here? Get the fuck out. Go.
Check out the main episode.
Show's over.
Planet of the Apes.
Go.
Bye.
Creep it up.
Keep it creepy. Bye.